You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. Politics may be divided by party lines, but great design uses every color in the palette. So whether your political views skew red, blue, green, or something in between, my next guest is all about bringing clarity and creativity to the messaging for the United States of America. Meena Yi served as the creative director for the White House, where she focused on branding and digital communications for now former President Biden. Previously, she served as design director for the Democratic National Committee, where she contributed to the Hillary for America campaign and served on Cory Booker's presidential campaign as his creative director. Now, between these roles, Meena worked as a consultant, collaborating with clients including Congressman Ilhan Omar, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and organizations such as Michelle Obama's When We All Vote, along with the SCIU on pro-union initiatives. Meena has gotten closer to Vice President Kamala Harris and President Obama than you and I ever will. She has used the White House's private bowling alley and has even skateboarded down the halls of the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Why? Because Meena is a badass, that's why, and I think you'll find her equally entertaining, fascinating, and amazing. So without further ado, Meena Yi, my friend, welcome to Spotlight Sessions. It is truly an honor to have you here. I'm so excited.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, just a quick disclaimer to the audience before we begin. The views expressed by Meena on the show here do not reflect the current or former views of the White House, nor current or former U.S. presidents. Okay, creative immunity has now been granted. So, your office was located in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Just a 3-minute walk to the Oval Office, right?
That's correct. I'm a fast walker though, so I would say a minute and a half for myself.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because there is a video of you skateboarding down the halls of the Eisenhower Executive Office building, or the EEOB that they refer to it as, that I saw on your latest Instagram post, which is so incredible, if I might add. What is the story behind that? We got to get into that.
Well, I am trying to learn to skateboard right now to really relive my, I guess, high school days. I am decades past high school, by the way. Um, and I know Tony Hawk has an image skating through EEOB when he was invited during the Obama administration. Um, and I thought, why not me? Like, in no way do I think I'm as good as Tony Hawk, and I will never be that good. But because I work there, I just felt like I had this access that I should try and take advantage of during my last few days there. And so I had a friend record a video as I was skateboarding down the halls. And when Tony Hawk did it, it was a big deal. He got so much shit and hate for it. Like people were like, "Oh, that's so disrespectful." But I think it's the opposite. Like he was invited there because he's a pro skater and he loves to skateboard, and so he did the thing that he loves to do, which was the reason why he was invited there. And I loved my job there, and I was leaving, and it was my last couple days, and I was sad. So I
Hmm.
thought, why not?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is you are no longer the creative director there because there's a new administration. And when a new administration comes into power, I think a lot of people in the audience may not realize that since you're an individual appointee, they have their own appointees, they have their own cabinet members and so on, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
It's heartbreaking, right? Because you had all those memories that you're making, all those incredible moments. I mean, just looking through your Instagram feed, there's so much awesome stuff there. What are your plans now? Where do you go next?
Well, I don't think anything will top working at the White House in terms of the events and the access that you have. But I still feel like I have to take part in not politics, but just doing all the work that I did, especially in climate with the Inflation Reduction Act. So with that, I decided to join a climate nonprofit, which will try to fight the pushback from the Trump administration and on the policies he's reversing and has already started reversing. We are no longer in the Paris climate agreement, but so I feel pretty passionately about that. So I'm at a place called Climate Power now. So hopefully we'll continue the good fight there.
Climate power. That's awesome. All right. So let's go back to your very first day, walking through those historic halls. You're on the job, your very first day. What surprised or excited you the most when you started your role as creative director for the White House?
It was my first time in EEOB. I know a lot of people who have worked at the White House before may have been to the EEOB just as a guest or visitor or some for some reason. And this was my first time. And I went to school across the street from EEOB and I always saw the building and I was like, wow, that building design is just so different from all the other buildings in DC, and I was always curious like what it looked like inside. So I was super excited, and it's, I think, just absolutely beautiful. The architecture, it's French Second Empire style. Just the rooms have like all these intricate detailed crown moldings and wallpaper, and I don't think it's real gold, but like, just gilded. Some things are gilded, some things are not. It's still an office building. Um, yeah. But the most memorable thing on my first day was I left my passport at home, and you need that in order to get your badge to get in and just move around because it needs to be visible at all times. So I had to go back home and get that.
What a great way to start off the day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Speaking of the EOB, I've heard rumors that that particular building is haunted. Is that true?
It definitely feels like it when you're there late at night. Um, there is a basement that's especially scary. And that's also where the bowling alley is. But I think at night the sounds just are louder and most of the people have gone home. So like every little sound you're like looking over and like, what's that? And like most large buildings that have some type of food in it, there can be mice. So it can be a little scary, but haven't seen anything truly haunted yet.
Let's talk about the work that you did at the White House when you were there. What did that consist of, and what were you responsible for?
Our job was mostly digital products. And we did touch on events as well, and we worked closely with the FLOTUS team for those events on certain projects. So my job, because our products were mainly digital, was to really just make the brand cohesive across all of our platforms. And when we worked with an event, to try to match the aesthetic and style we use in our digital products, so that when people, see photos of the event and then they would go online, there was like a cohesiveness between the two. So all of our platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, we did end up launching a Reddit. So those are our digital platforms, and it was really just working with a lot of the different teams to create these products, because creating a graphic at the White House is a lot of different teams are involved because of all the different things it might touch, like all the different policies or the different holidays, etc.
Like, what's the approval process or design process like? Like, who ultimately approved your work? Was it the president directly, or was it someone else?
It was not Joe Biden directly. But that would be great to get feedback from him. Occasionally, we did get feedback from him, like he might see a graphic that he liked, and he's like, "Oh, I really like that graph. Like, can we make more of it, like in that style, and put more out about the economy?" Um, the the approval process was How do I guess there were a lot of different teams involved depending on what we were talking about. So if we were talking about the economy, NEC would be involved, and NEC stands for National Economic Council. The government loves to use acronyms. So if I say an acronym and you don't know what I'm talking about, just ask and I'll spell it out. Um, so if we did something on policy, we would have NEC involved, we would have my boss involved, and the platforms team involved. And we all did sort of a mini review to make sure it looked right. Sometimes research would be involved to make sure the data or the numbers we're using were accurate. And the sources we got it from were accurate. So depending on what we put out, the approvals process could uh, be a long list of people.
There's also the other element too, right? Because sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes you have access to sensitive information. So do you need like special clearance to work on some projects, or, are you not allowed to work on some projects because you don't have clearance? How does that work?
For that, if there was something that the public didn't know about yet, which was often, we would know maybe a couple days, sometimes even just a day before. And so it's just a rush of formulating a plan and creating these graphics and getting it out there. Um, there were times where people in the video team would know ahead of time because they might have to go and record something and edit and produce it. But it was a need to know basis. But each person that joins the White House has to fill out a form called SF-86, which takes 5 to 6 hours to fill out because you go back to when you're 18, and then following that, you have an FBI interview, and that process takes can take 90 days. So you basically do like a pre-background check. If you pass that, then you start working there, and then potentially after 90 days, you could get fired.
It's pretty intense. I think a lot of times, right, we don't see that behind the scenes stuff, right? We're not aware of it. We only see what we see in the public, and you guys make it look so easy too, even though there's a lot going on. But that's why you're here, to give us that insight, to kind of give us that sneak peek behind the door. I would imagine that communications at the White House can, shift in a heartbeat. Like you said, like sometimes you guys would know stuff a day or two before the public would know about it. But was there ever a moment when news broke or a speech changed and you had to like turn around an important design in record time?
Yes. Well, we learned with Joe Biden speeches that we just get the template ready, and the words come after the speech is over because he really speaks from the heart. So there were changes often. So we would work with our platforms team to be like, this is the template, and these are the amount of words on average that we can fit here. So they would really work with us to try to find the quote that could fit. Um, Disasters like Hurricane Helene really shifted our focus from what we were pushing at the moment. Something unfortunate like that. Um, Really, our focus shifted to fighting the misinformation that was out there about how to get help, um, rather than really engaging in the overall messaging about climate change. So disasters like that can really shift our messaging and whatever happens in the news cycle.
I want to focus on that misinformation stuff because you're right. That was something, and it's still something that's being fought today. As a creative person, as a designer, how do you use like those creative skills to kind of combat that misinformation? Like what do you find is most effective in combating misinformation?
We found just simple, concise, direct text works best in these cases because we just want to get the proper information out there. And these graphics are being made in minutes, maybe hours if there's available time, but generally in minutes. So we found that to work the best. And yeah, we don't get crazy and add illustration or try to find a stock photo or anything. Especially also because this is such a serious um, situation that's affecting a lot of people. We don't want to be insensitive as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts and a lot of collaboration too. as a designer, as a creative person, you want to get out those messages in a simplistic way as possible, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes, especially, working in government, they don't think the way we do. So how do you work around that challenge, that obstacle?
I think it's really just like also building that relationship with the people that you're working with for them to trust you, for you to trust them. Um, and because things go so rapidly, we really have to lean on that trust. And if a platforms person says like, oh, but the last time we did a graphic on this topic or something similar, it performed better in this way, and then we trust that and we go in that direction. Yeah, and sometimes they'll see something out in the wild that they think is a good idea. They'll share it with us, and then we'll be like, oh yeah, we do like that, or like, oh, we love that, but we don't have capacity. And instead of being like just no, we try to come up with another solution that could work for them and work for us.
So there was a lot of data that you're pulling from to find out, to basically inform your design decisions.
Yes, whenever we had time, um, we would try to do A/B testing, and also the platforms team, bless them, they pulled a lot of the data on a lot of the graphics that were out there and videos that were out there to better inform us like what did well, what didn't do well. I have worked at places where there is a dedicated analytics team and places where it really falls on the platforms team. So um, I'm just glad it wasn't me.
For those of you who are just tuning in, we're speaking with Meena Yi. She served as the creative director for the White House, where she was focusing on branding and digital communications for now former President Biden. I'm looking at some of the Instagram channels that you are also responsible for. I'm going to post those links because I know that they've been archived. There's a lot of eyes on this work, a lot of pressure. When you were in that situation, how did you stay grounded? How did you not let it get to your head that you're doing communication for the entire country? That just thinking about that can, like, cause anxiety, right? Maybe you've dealt with that, I don't know.
Yeah, I try not to think about it, but also just because it's just on social, it's not just, sorry, it's on social media and I'm not interacting or in front of these people in real life. It takes away that fear, like, oh my God. Though we have, put things out sometimes with typos here and there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I won't tell you what though. But you know what happens when you're rushing and you might lose that attention to detail because you're trying to get something else right. But yeah.
See that, everyone? Even the top dogs can make mistakes, but we try our best, right? We try
Yeah,
our best.
we're only human.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, so speaking of some of those rush projects, some of those unexpected projects, what was, like, some of the most surprising or unusual design requests that you received?
The most unusual was it was a request from the president. It was when congressional Republicans were trying to gut Social Security, and Ron Johnson said a quote. It was something like about bringing Social Security on the line every year or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but President Biden just was not having it. So he requested for that quote to be put on a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and printed for the press pool. Um, so it was the easiest graphic we ever had to make, but then also one of a kind because we have never had a request like that and didn't get one since that one time.
What was the chain of communications like? I mean, did you have any opportunity to interact directly with him?
In that case, I did not interact with him directly. So he is my boss's boss's boss. Um, but the moments that I did interact with him were for other digital products. Like we did a whiteboard explainer on what Bidenomics is and how trickle down economics doesn't work. And we had him explain it on a whiteboard, which the design team pre-drew. And in that case, because it was a product of ours and it was being recorded, that was going to be put out on platforms, we did interact then. And we made it very simple so that we just, had him check mark some things and flip the board because we also want to be respectful of his time and everyone's trying to get, time with him to do the work that they need to do.
Yeah, I did see that board. Um, for those of you in the audience, take a look at Mina's Instagram. She's posted some of these. You can see this board, this Bidenomics board. It's very interesting. I was wondering, if you guys were responsible for that. You guys did a lot of interesting projects. What was the most fun project that you worked on?
Um, I think the most fun products we work on are a lot of our event stuff. Um, there are digital products that come from it, of course. So, for instance, the Easter egg roll. I don't know if you guys have heard of the White House Easter egg roll, but for parents, it's a big deal because they bring their kids and they can take photos of their kids at the White House with Easter eggs. But the design team created the illustration that would go on all the Easter eggs and some of the signage. Um, and that event was it's just refreshing. It takes your mind off of like some of the other things you have to work on. And then the one that we did in 2023, um, the senior designer at the time, Abby Pitzer, she designed the illustration. NASA decided to take her Easter egg up to space. And so that was really cool. And we got, video of it. Obviously, no one from the team went up to space. It was an astronaut that was up there that got the footage. But when it came back down, the egg did have to be quarantined. So
Obviously, when you design, you're designing for an institution known for tradition. Yet you're also trying to communicate in fresh ways because you're creative. How did you strike a balance between honoring history and pushing creative boundaries?
my solution to this was to use sub-brands, which also just made it easier for us to organize the different types of communication we put out. We had a look and brand for POTUS, and sometimes we took an illustrative approach that was more visual and more like I guess you could call it an infographic. And yeah, sometimes we just use, full bleed photos to really diversify the way that we communicated with people because there are just so many people that to speak to.
How do you keep your own creative voice alive while you're designing within some of the strict guidelines or brand standards that have already been established? Because that can be, as a creative, that can be, very challenging, right? That can drive us crazy. But how did you work within that?
I think it's really just continuing to push the boundaries and see what gets approved and having people understand that like, oh, you can do the work, but let me take it one step further and see if you might this might tickle your fancy. So it was really just continuing to push the boundaries and yeah, just I think the more you do it, the more desensitized someone gets to it. So eventually they might say yes.
What ways did you see your design work influencing or reflecting American culture?
Well, I did see a lot of memes come out from some of the things we did. Um, One project we did, we had President Biden write mental health is health. And it's a thing that he says often, and we were celebrating mental health. It was like Mental Health Month. And people took that and created a lot of, they replaced the text with something else and created a lot of funny, if not sometimes mean memes, but we're used to it. So I saw that on Twitter for a couple of days. But also just a lot of other institutions that I see. that might just be in like my space. There are a lot of progressive, either nonprofits or something, will come out with a graphic that looks similar to something that we've made, and then their audience is different than our audience. So I don't get upset at that. I think I'm flattered by that. So I just hope it reaches the people that it needs to reach.
Yeah, that's true. Imitation is a form of flattery. So just keep that in mind, audience, when somebody steals your ideas. That's an honor. All right. What do you see as the current state of design and the importance of good design in relation to helping to shape America?
I think design has just shifted so much. You can always make something that's so beautiful and functional, and at the same times, it can be unrelatable to everyday Americans. So I think a good example of this is, like when people write in the Notes app and then they screenshot that and then they post that as their way of like putting out a lot of copy. Um, I think something more relatable to that. I've been seeing that a lot more in design and, just the meme culture with, that's funny and it celebrates bad design. So I do appreciate the change in that because I think design should be for everyone and everything, and it doesn't necessarily have to follow the traditional rules of like being beautiful design.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because over the years, I've noticed that too with this bad design. It's like people are embracing it because it's so bad, but that in itself is becoming a design movement. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think like the intentions behind it are good? I guess because funny memes can come out of it, right? Funny exploration can come out of it. But do you think it's like a fad, or do you think it's like a trend that might evolve into something else?
I feel like it's people try, I don't know, like not trying to be designers, but taking part in this like visual graphic culture that we have. And I think there's always going to be a space for designers separate from that as well. So I embrace it and I'm not too worried.
Where do you see like the future of design going, or the future of creativity? Again, just your opinion in like say like the next 5 years or 10 years.
Oh, I don't know if you guys want to hear this, but I think about AI all the time. I'm like, oh, does that mean my job will be obsolete so soon? And I think about Canva and just a lot of these programs that people can design, and I love that it's so accessible. And at the same time, I'm like, but that's my whole career, and that's all I know. So my outlook isn't great, but in terms of design, just the look of design, um, in 5 years, I really can't say. I feel like it's changed so much, and I'm just excited to see the direction it takes. And I know a lot of people are scared of change, but I like change. So yeah, I'm excited by it.
Yeah, me too. We've had conversations with other guests on this show about AI and about how it can influence our industry. And a lot of time, I remember when AI first started to really take center stage in the public debate and discussions, and a lot of people were fearful of it. Right? They considered it an enemy. But yet we kinda can't look at it as an enemy. We have to look at it as just another tool, right, in the designer's creative toolbox. We could find ways for it to be an ally instead of, fearing it, because it's not going anywhere, right? It's here to stay, and it just seems to be increasing. I mean, I'm right there with you. There are days where I think, "Oh, no, this is gonna take over my job," and maybe that's why it's so hard to find a job, but I don't know. I'm back and forth. Sometimes
Yeah,
I'm
me too.
all about it. Yeah, you know it. What do you do personally to like decompress or detach? Are there any rituals or routines that you adopted to stay level-headed? Because remember, mental health is health.
Yeah, I agree. Um, when I stay in DC, I really just like to be home order some food and put on, trashy TV. Um, but if I have, more time available, I do like to travel, um, like most people do. And one thing I am very interested in is trying out van life. So you might see me in a van somewhere, living out of a van soon.
Yes, you mentioned this to me earlier about this van life concept. What is this? To those in the audience who are not familiar with van life, what is that?
Van life is this, I don't want to call it a movement, but it's just people taking vans and converting them into mobile homes. So it's not quite an RV. It's, a van that can fit in a parking lot, a van that can go off-roading a little bit. So you just sort of live out the van and travel while you're, I don't know, doing work during the day, travel and enjoy the weekend somewhere different.
Yeah, it's really interesting, audience. It's a mindset. Uh, I have a friend who's done this for several years now. I'll send you their information, Mina. She does it in the Great American Southwest, and it's
Oh,
really
wow.
impressive. Yeah, it's really impressive. So if you can do it, hey, go for it. More power to you. But it's cool because it helps us detach from all the things we're connected to. Well, look, we mentioned earlier, that creatives are perfectionists. We have to admit we all make mistakes, and you mentioned some of these. Were there any other like slip ups or memorable close calls on a project that thinking back on it, you can actually laugh about it now, but in the moment you were like freaking out?
The most of them have been the typos, and um, one thing we don't do is like we don't manipulate photos in a way where it changes like how someone looks. So we don't try to make Joe Biden like we don't try to get rid of like some of his wrinkles or anything like that. But sometimes we do cut him out and layer it on top of the photo because maybe we add a gradient and we want the photo to be covered by the gradient, but we don't want him specifically to be covered by the gradient. And there was once where the photo that laid on top the cutout that laid on top of the photo didn't align with himself, back in the photo completely, and, um, that somehow made it into the news, and along with some other stuff that was like, the White House manipulates the photos to make Joe Biden look younger. Um, I do remember that. My boss had to call me and was like, "Hey, just letting you know, this you might see this in the news. Don't worry about it. Just maybe don't have him not aligned with himself in the photo." I'm like, "Yep, you got it."
Wow. That having so many eyes on your work. And just for those of you out in the audience who are listening to this, who have stressful days, think about what Mina does. And hopefully that puts in perspective for you. There's always going to be someone who has it worse than you. And there's someone who has it worse than Mina. But it's like that type of scrutiny, like that's what we thrive on as well as creatives, right? Because we have this uncanny attention to detail. So when we notice something that's slightly off or someone or worse, someone else notices that, that haunts us forever, right?
It sure does.
I can hear it in the tone of your voice too. It's like one of those things like, well, you can go back in time and change it. But hey, look, you live and learn. Um, were there any other times that you missed the mark, but you gained something or learned something valuable from it?
I think it's very hard to miss the mark when you have so many people working with you to check everything. Um, I can tell you of a story before I joined, my designer who was there for all 4 years of his administration. Um, she made this beautiful graphic, but the messaging was like Joe Biden saved you 16 cents on your 4th of July celebration this year, which I think missed the mark because one, no one cares about 16 cents. And it was like its own graphic. It wasn't like, small somewhere with something else that was bigger, better news. Um, so I think people before me made the mistake so I could learn from them.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's a
Yeah.
little little weird of a thing because you're right. Most people don't care. Now, if you are new to the Adobe Creative Career Discord, I just want to take some time to share one of the coolest things we have going on here, and that would be the mentorship program. On the server, there are a bunch of incredible mentors specializing in all different creative fields, from graphic design to motion design to video, illustration, photography, creative writing, and so much more. And they are just waiting for you to connect with them. So here's how to access that list. Hop on over to the Adobe Creative Career Discord and look for the mentorship category. Under that section, there's a channel called Find a Mentor. Within that space, there are bios for everyone and what they specialize in. And if you can't access that mentorship category, well, hop on over to server info, click on choose a role, and select mentorship under the opt-in categories listed right there. To those of you who are just tuning in, by the way, we're speaking with Meena Yi. She was the former creative director at the White House under the Biden administration. What's one thing people think happens at the White House regarding communications or design, but in reality, it's totally different?
I think people think because it's government, we should have all these things and resources to do right by the people. But I think the reality is like we are paid by taxpayers. Our resources come from taxpayers. So things can move a little slow. And I think that's also a stereotype of government. There, I think it goes both ways. So yeah, there's it took us a long time to get Adobe and some other tools because things that are cloud-based, it's hard to archive and everything needs to be archived if you work for the federal government. So everything we've done has been archived. And if there's no way to archive it, if IT can't figure out a way, then you can't use it.
Interesting. Was there also like the security concern too, using cloud-based software?
Oh, yeah. So there were some plugins that some of my designers wanted to use, but because they were developed by um, either a foreign country or it couldn't be verified. We couldn't use certain plugins for some of our tools. Um, so definitely, yeah, security is an issue. And we also had like a strict single sign-on, so you could only work from your work laptop. Um, yeah. So basically, you're taking your laptop everywhere you go.
This question just came in from, and forgive me if I butcher your name here, Ty or T. Uh, they ask, as a 3D artist, I'm curious to know if there were any 3D artists on your team.
No, unfortunately, we didn't have a 3D artist. We had an illustrator and she also served as a designer. But yeah, no 3D artist, but that would have been really cool, especially when we showed like the holiday decorations in the East Wing.
Was there any like technology that you wish they had? Because I know sometimes there's this misconception, or maybe it's accurate, I don't know, where government is kind of, I mean, you mentioned being slow, in like the process of things. But sometimes we think of government as kind of like old, right? And is slow to embrace technology. Were there any like times when you wish that you had more technology to work with? Or were you given pretty much anything you asked for?
No, we were not given anything we asked for, which I wish was the case. Everything goes through, has to go through something. I don't know what that process behind the scenes is like. So, for instance, Pinterest was blocked from our laptops, and sometimes we want to do a little research. And we do Behance, we do Google search, and sometimes we want Pinterest too. So it took a while to get Pinterest unblocked, and even then it was always glitchy. But we got to a point where we could go to the website, but we couldn't log in and save anything. So we just sort of just scrolled and screenshotted if we wanted to save anything.
That's interesting. Pinterest isn't, a particular site I would imagine would be blocked. I mean, was there like, what did they ever disclose like like a reason for that or?
No, I think it just, yeah, I'm not sure why. Yeah, a lot of sites were blocked. I do miss having Gmail. So we used Outlook, and once I started using Outlook, I was like, I really miss my Gmail.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference, a huge
Yeah.
difference between that. I'm a Yahoo mailman myself. I like its interface. It hasn't changed for decades. I love it like that. But I'm
I
a
did
creature of
notice
habit.
that when we started talking over email, I was like, oh, he's using Yahoo.
Yeah, I know, right? Next thing you would have expected is me to have like a Hotmail account, right? But going back in time, um, we're for you, those of you in the audience, we're pretty much the same age, so we're getting a lot of these jokes. To some of you who are younger, you're probably like, "What the heck is Hotmail?"
Yeah.
All right, let's speaking of a lot of the new creatives that are coming into their own today, who are just starting to enter college, we have some people in the audience who are still in high school. What important messages or advice do you have for today's creatives and future creatives?
I think the important thing to do is just to keep making things and but not burning yourself out, to really find what area you're passionate about. And that's something that I found later in life. And it I wish that I had continued to create and do things. It doesn't necessarily have to be like design or video or animation, but just to get, the mind going and really finding what you enjoy to do.
What about like for creatives who aspire to high stakes or public facing positions? What's like your biggest piece of advice for staying sane, inspired, and effective?
I think just remembering um, that you can't please everyone. And when you make work for a lot of people, someone is going to not like it somewhere. So, but it will also speak with a lot of people. So I think just remembering that and knowing that, and not harping on just, oh, those people didn't like my work or anything like that, will get you nowhere. And I think, yeah, just doing your best is the best you can do.
This question comes from Avi, who asks, typically designers have a set of brand guidelines to work with, but he's curious to know how that works in a space like the White House. Are brand guidelines different from project to project, or do they all follow like a specific pattern? What kind of insight can you provide with that when it comes to brand standards and brand guidelines?
For each administration, you bring your own brand, basically. So the Biden administration worked with a firm while they were transitioning to really build the raw elements of the brand. And then the in-house team was really taking that to expand and explore for all the different projects and communications. Which is why we had all the different sub-brands, because we wanted to appeal to as many people as possible rather than just highest engagement. Um, we wanted high engagement too, but we also wanted to make sure like we were communicating to as much people as possible rather than just siloing to a certain group.
Uh, because I have to ask this question for my own self interest. But, you were tasked with conveying the administration's messages to the public in a clear, compelling way. But was there ever any directive or even casual hallway chatter about unusual topics like UFOs or UAP? And I asked that question because in December, there were all these drone reports. You remember this?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Now, there was a lot of mixed messages going on at that time. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of chatter. I know from a public relations standpoint, it was a nightmare. But were you involved with some of that, like communication, or was there ever any directive to approaching that? I'm just curious.
No, but I wish there was, because then maybe I would know too. But yeah, we didn't do anything on that. And I had friends that called me, and a couple of them live in New York and New Jersey, and they're like, "Do you know what's going on?" I'm like, "No, I don't, but I wish I did."
Was there even just like casual hallway chatter about unusual topics like UFOs or UAP? And again, forgive me for asking this, but I'm always curious about this subject.
No, yeah, we did not touch topics like that at all. And I do know, didn't they come out and say, yes, we've confirmed that they exist, but that was the most they said. But yeah, we didn't do anything on it.
Yeah, they did. The Pentagon did come forward to acknowledge that there are anomalous phenomenon in the skies. And yeah, it ignited a huge debate. All right, so let's get into some of the perks while working at the White House, because that's the fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Some of these things like the West Wing tours, the Truman Bowling Alley, going to some of these amazing events. Talk to us about some of these exciting perks that you had there.
Yeah, the Western tour is great because you can bring your friends and family, and if you have a blue badge, which I did, let me just explain the badges real quick. With the green badge, you have access to EEOB, but you can't go into the physical White House. So you can be on campus and go to your office in EEOB, but you yeah can't go over there. I had the blue badge, which gives you access to both spaces, and if you have the blue badge, it is much easier to get a West Wing tour. And the West Wing tour is not public. So the West Wing tour is given by someone who works at the White House who has a blue badge. And they did make slots available for people who had the green badge. Um, so I don't want to say that they weren't allowed to do it. They were. But the blue badge, the access is just different, so it was much easier to get a slot. So I was able to bring so many family and friends into the West Wing. They were able By the way, I would be the tour guide. There's no official tour guide, like the person who brings the people is a tour guide. So I don't know if I did a great job of being a tour guide, but I was just able to bring people in, see the Oval Office. And everyone was like, wow, the West Wing is just so much smaller than we thought. I'm like, yeah, it is. So the press briefing room is also on that side. So people were able to see that.
Uh, Talk to me about the Truman Bowling Alley.
The Truman Bowling Alley is actually an EEOB. I believe it was in the White House and then they moved it to EEOB. So it's in the basement of EEOB, and of course, everyone wants to go bowling. So you have to sign up and reserve a slot, and you can bring up to 20 people. And I've had two parties there because it's UIOB and you can bring food and stuff. So, um, yeah, it's really a fun time and it's free bowling.
Oh my goodness. You know what? It's a shame I didn't know you earlier because that would have been quite the party.
Yeah.
Are you a good bowler?
I'm not. And I'm sure you watched my video of myself bowling where I hit the gutter ball, but yeah, it's still
Yeah,
fun.
that's what it's about. It's about having fun, you know? What about some of the events? Because I would imagine, like on the 4th of July, it's quite the fireworks display, right?
Oh yeah, it's a great place to be during 4th of July because you have a great view of the fireworks. You're on the south lawn of the White House, and they bring out snacks and food, and you're there with people you like, and you can bring some friends in. So it's a good time. Um, you are stuck there all day, and it's usually very hot on 4th of July, so you do need to prepare for that because once you go in, you can't come out. If you come out, you don't get back in.
Oh, okay. What are some of these other events that you attended?
I'll talk about two. My favorite would be Halloween, just because in general I love celebrating Halloween, but also the president comes out, he's casual, he has a baseball cap on, and the first lady always had a costume or dressed up. And my niece was able to go to her first Halloween at the White House, and she's a baby, so she was carried in line by my brother to grab candy from President Biden, and I thought that was just a really cool moment. Um, and they have all the different agencies and departments there also handing out candy. So NASA was there, State Department was there. And it's just really fun to see like all these different stations and agencies that you don't know about and you learn about. Um, Another cool event are state arrival ceremonies. I have never been invited to a state dinner, but I have been to a state arrival ceremony. And there was one where South came, and my parents are from South Korea, so I was able to bring them, and they were just really able to enjoy this, event that celebrated both where they came from and their new home.
To those who may be listening to this live or on demand later, who's thinking about getting into a career in politics, or maybe having a trajectory to get to where you were, what guidance would you offer? How should someone start that type of career? Where do they begin?
I think getting involved in politics, however you can, is always helpful because it's such a small community. Like when I joined the White House, I think I knew several people that I had worked with previously, or I just knew through working in politics. So I think just getting your foot in the door in any way is helpful. And I think it's also very important to be kind. Like the person who hired me, that was my boss at the time. I had worked with him previously at the DNC, and it's not that I disliked him. We get along just fine, but we were on separate teams, and our team helped him a lot. And I think if I didn't have that relationship, I wouldn't even say it was a relationship. It was just like first impression. If I didn't give that first impression of whatever he took from it, then a good chance that he wouldn't have hired me. Yeah, so I just think it's important whether I consider it a type of networking just to be kind and to find solutions working with people rather than just always saying no or I can't do that.
This question comes from Allie, aka the Design Doll. Uh, in terms of your team, how many designers did you have on your team?
We had two designers. The video team was larger. It fluctuated between, I think, like 5 to 8. Um, And we also worked with a contractor for some of our larger projects, like the websites, because they also had like a developer team on hand as well.
That's it. Such a small team.
I know.
It's amazing. And that kind of like makes us appreciate what you did even more because wow, that is hard to do. For those of you who have worked on small teams, you know how difficult it is just to get certain projects, out the door in a certain time frame. Now you're talking about such a small team getting projects out the door for the entire country. Like was your schedule so tight that you didn't even have like room to breathe or
There were definitely days like that for sure. And I was hands-on. I had to be. There is no way like I couldn't be hands-on. So I think it was important that I had a design background as well as could create products along with the designers. Um, because yeah. And the job before that I had before that, I was more hands off. So it was definitely a big contrast. So um, you can get burned out. Initially, I was like, oh, I'm enjoying this. I'm designing again. You feel the adrenaline going. But you do have to remember that at the end of the day, it's just a job. And so you should definitely take time to regroup and refresh.
to learn about tonight's guest, Meena Yi, you could check out her website. Well, actually, her LinkedIn and her Instagram, which I posted in the chat earlier. And for those of you listening on demand, it will be in the show notes. I know you mentioned that your website is kind of like, work in progress right now. Are there any plans to get it live?
Yeah, I think so. People always say like the thing that you work on for yourself is always last on your priority list. It'll just be minayi.com.
All right, Ali asked this one again too. What do you value as the most important boundaries you maintain in your position?
I think when it comes to my health and my family, so I, for a moment, needed to take weekly appointments with my doctor, and there was no way I wasn't gonna do that. So that was my boundary. And the thing is, like, I did feel guilty about it though, because then my designers are stuck with that work. Um, but that was my boundary, was to make sure I was okay physically, mentally, I worked that out on my own later, maybe. But mental health is health. And also, my dad also got sick at some point, so I did have to take some time to be with him and help him and my mom out. So that was my boundary where I had to just leave and go do those things.
Yeah, and Ali follows up here saying it makes sense that you would feel some guilt on a team so small. Yeah, that's still blowing my mind that the team overall, and not just your team, but the video team, the web team, like, oh my goodness, that's pretty amazing. And it just makes us appreciate the people who are working behind the scenes to help our government work, to help this whole country stay afloat. So we're honored to have you as being one of those people who made it happen. So it's pretty cool, Mina. Let's get into the origin story behind your Instagram name, Tuxedo Cat Crap. What is the origin story behind this?
I used to have a tuxedo cat, and he was an indoor-outdoor cat, but he was very good with using the bathroom outdoors and using the litter box if he was inside. But one day he just decided not to be good about that. And I think that was the day I made my Instagram profile, thinking I would change it to something later, but then it just kind of stuck. And then my profile picture is actually a mouse that my cat had gifted me. Um, and if you don't know, if your cat gifts you a dead animal, you're supposed to accept it because it's like them paying rent, I think. So that was not the first one he gave me, but this was the first one where I didn't freak out because sometimes he would bring them home, still twitching and stuff, and it would freak me out. But
Oh,
I think he learned his lesson and he gave me just a cute little mouse.
I had a tuxedo cat as well. It was a she. Her name was Toes. What was your cat's name?
Ooh, just cat. I think I tried other names, but I would just end up calling him Cat all the time, and he responded to that, so
When you're working at the White House, you're with some of the smartest people in the country, if not the world, hopefully. What were some important words of wisdom that you were given while you're working there? Or maybe some important discussions that you had that you can pass on to us?
yeah, I think, some important words that were said to me, while I was working there, but it came from a friend, was that you should do your best, but not give your all, because if you give your all, then you have nothing left for yourself, and that's something that stuck with me, and just, going back to the boundaries to make sure I kept the boundaries that were important to myself. So I did my best, but I did not give my all so that I can enjoy life still.
I know you had mentioned to me earlier that you were going to get out of politics because your whole career has been shaped by that. You wanted to try something different. You're obviously going to be working on the climate change subject going forward. What about in the future beyond that? Are there any initiatives or things that you really want to be a part of, maybe even on a volunteer basis, where you can use your leverage as a creative mind to make this world a better place? What are your plans in the distant future?
I think about that often because I don't think I'm old, just to be clear. I do not think I'm old at all. But when I was at the White House, and on the digital team especially, it attracts a younger crowd. People were, decades plus younger than me. So it did make me think about, oh my God, I'm aging out of this, soon. Um, so my backup is to just, find some corporate job where they have all ages. But I would really love to find a creative outlet that still brings in income, and or I think just like get out of the creative field so I can look at it from an outside perspective without being so involved in it. Um, I don't know if that would be just to give myself a little break from it because I've just been doing it for so long, but I know some people feel so passionate about design and they want it in all aspects of their life. And unfortunately, that is not me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Sometimes you got to do other things. Creativity is always going to be part of us. It's always going to be a part of our thinking, our way of life. We can't get out of it, right? It's a blessing and a curse. But actual design work, there are days that sometimes we wish we were doing something else, because it can be draining. You can get burnt out in this field really quickly. Like, do you feel that in some respects you might be a little burnout?
Oh yeah, I definitely think I do. And I'm so lucky to have this new role I'm in. It will be completely hands off. Um, and there's a good work-life balance. And right now, I feel like that's what I need in this moment. Um, I'm going to Asia for 3 weeks next month, so that will be when I really decompress.
Well, you've given us a lot of insight. You've given us a lot of information, a lot of exciting stories, a lot of great, tidbits and pieces of information, things that we can take away in our own careers. And I think that's about wraps it up for this episode of Spotlight Sessions. Again, I want to thank my guest, Meena Yi, for joining us tonight, discussing her incredible career journey. Be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And if you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight Sessions and all the great content here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events at the top of the server so you can see what's coming next. So thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth, aka JBam. You can always find me right here on Discord, LinkedIn, or over on my website, justinbamforth.com. And Meena, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Justin, for inviting me, and thank you guys so much for joining. This was so much fun.
For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career.